and we've already learned what the radian measures are on our unit circle. So remember, 0 is here. When we go halfway around, we end up at pi, and then if we go back to 0, that's 2 pi. So make sure you know those pretty well before we move on to this video number 2. So if you need to go back and watch video 1, go ahead and do that again, please. So today we're going to talk about some trig values, sine, cosine, tangent values, also secant, cosecant, and cotangent values. So we're first going to find sine at 0, cosine at 0, tangent at 0, secant, cosecant, and cotangent. So let's go ahead and talk about this stuff. So basically, wherever we go on the unit circle, there's going to be an x and a y value. And at this point on the unit circle at 0, you'll know that the radius here is 1. So if I go from the origin, if I go 1 unit to the right, I'm at the ordered pair 1, 0. So there's the ordered pair representing that dot I have right there. So we're going to use this to list our sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent values. So sine is going to be my y value. So at 0, I already wrote down the ordered pair. The y value is 0, because this y value here gives me my sine. So cosine is going to be the x value. So the cosine at 0 is 1. These are things that we want to have memorized or be able to produce really quickly. So we're going to take some time today writing them out, but in the future you want to have these pretty quickly accessible. So tangent is actually going to be the ratio of sine to cosine, or in other words, the ratio of y, the y value, or the y coordinate over the x coordinate. So if I look up here and take the sine divided by cosine, that's going to be 0 divided by 1, and 0 divided by 1 is just 0. Okay, secant of 0. Secant is actually going to be the reciprocal of cosine. So if we go up here, our cosine value was 1. So if I flip that over or put it under a 1 as a fraction, I get 1 over 1, so secant of 0 is just 1. Cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of sine. So when I go up here and take the reciprocal of sine, well, that's going to give me 1 over 0, because sine of 0 is 0, and 1 over 0 is undefined. And lastly, cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Or in other words, it's going to be x over y, or cosine over sine. So when I say cosine over sine, I get 1 over 0, so that again is undefined. So go ahead and access your flashcards or take some notes on this. We're going to move on to another part of our circle. So go ahead and make sure that your flashcards have these values written on the back of them. And I'm going to get rid of some of this work here, and we'll work on some more. So we're going to now go over to pi over 2. So at pi over 2, we're going to give the sine, cosine, tangent values for all of those. And hopefully you remember that pi over 2 is going to be at the top of the circle. So as soon as I get these written down here, we're going to put that in. Okay, so going to the top of our circle, now I'm on the y-axis. So my x-coordinate at pi over 2 is 0. So at this point on my unit circle, I've gone no units to the left or to the right, so I'm at 0, and my y-coordinate is 1. So tangent, remember that's our y value, so tangent of pi over 2 is, sine is our y value, so sine of pi over 2 is 1. Cosine is our x value. Cosine pi over 2 is 0. Tangent was going to be the ratio of sine over cosine, so I'm taking sine over cosine, or 1 over 0, and that's undefined. Secant at pi over 2, secant's the reciprocal of cosine, remember? And so I go up here to cosine, and I have 1 over 0. That gives me undefined. Cosecant of pi over 2, cosecant's the reciprocal of sine. So if I take the reciprocal of 1, that's 1 over 1, which just gives me 1. And the cotangent at pi over 2, cotangent is my x-coordinate over my y-coordinate, and so I get 0 over 1 or 0. So those are my values that I have at pi over 2. Again, get those jotted down in some nice notes, or put those on your flashcards, please. We're going to repeat the same process here for pi and 3 pi over 2. Okay, so now going over here to the left side of our unit circle on the x-axis, we now have a coordinate, x-coordinate of -1. I'm going to click to get that box out of there. So if I've gone 1 unit left at this position, I'm at a x-coordinate of -1 and my y-coordinate is 0. So we're going to try to get these memorized, but I'm going to actually get rid of our blue hints here. Since we want these all from memory, we're going to try to do this without these extra notes helping us. Okay, so looking at pi now. Pi, what was sine? Was that our x-coordinate or y-coordinate? Answer that for me. Okay, it's our y-coordinate. So sine of pi is actually the same as sine of 0 is. Since these two have the same y-coordinate, that one's also going to be 0. Cosine is our x-coordinate. So over here, our x-coordinate is -1. Tangent, that's sine over cosine, the ratio of sine over cosine. And so when I take the ratio of sine over cosine, that gives me 0. So at 0 and pi, those two radian measures have a sine equal to 0, and they also have a tangent equal to 0. Just something you want to get memorized. Okay, secant was the reciprocal of which? Answer it out loud to yourself, please, or answer it to yourself. Secant was the reciprocal of cosine. So if I take 1 over my cosine value, 1 over -1, that gives me -1. So then cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. 1 over sine is going to be undefined. 1 over 0 is undefined. And then cotangent. Cotangent is going to be cosine over sine. So if I look up here, cosine is -1 divided by sine of 0. That gives me -1 divided by 0. That gives me undefined also. Okay, we have one more set to roll through. So go ahead and get those jotted down on your flashcards. Get some notes there. And I'll erase these. Lastly, we're going to go down here to 3 pi over 2. So at the bottom of our circle here, we have 3 pi over 2, which is 3 halves of pi. So let me get these jotted down. Okay, so we're getting this memorized, that sine is which? Is sine our x-coordinate or our y-coordinate? Okay, good. Sine is our y-coordinate. And we have this memorized also, right? Tangent is sine over cosine. And answer this for me. Secant is the reciprocal of which? Okay, good. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Okay, let's go down to this point on the circle. So now from the origin, I've gone neither left nor right. So my x-coordinate is 0, but I've gone down 1 unit. So my y-coordinate would be what? Answer it for me. Good, -1. Okay, so now let's fill this out. you just told me a minute ago that sine was our y-coordinate. So our y-coordinate here is -1. You then know that cosine is our x-coordinate, 0. Tangent is the ratio of sine over cosine. So if I take the sine value over the cosine value, that gives me something divided by 0, which is undefined. So tangent is undefined at pi/2 and 3π/2, because when I take my y-coordinate divided by x-coordinate, I'm going to get something divided by 0, and that gives me an undefined tangent. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. You all just told me that. So if I go up here to the cosine and take the reciprocal, that's giving me 1 divided by 0, which is undefined. Cosecant is my reciprocal of my sine, or my y-coordinate, and so that's going to give me 1 divided by -1, which is just -1. And lastly, cotangent at 3π/2 is going to be my cosine divided by sine. So if I take cosine divided by sine, that's going to give me 0. And I just memorized it starts with co, so it's cosine over sine. I memorized that when I was in high school, and I still use that reminder today. So try to come up with some patterns to help yourself remember these. Look for any patterns that you can help yourself commit these to memory, because these are super important. Get them on your flashcards, study them, and this will help you a lot in calculus this year.